Welcome to the program, everyone. On the day the world watched a bizarre Brazil. On Sunday, Congress voted to launch impeachment proceedings against President Dilma Rousseff. Now, everything beyond that will require you to suspend a little bit of sanity and to suck in the surreal. Now, the president was elected with 54 million votes, and she is not charged with any crime, but she could very well be removed from office. Now, she's accused of sugarcoating the nation's finances to win voter favor. Now, those accusing her, including her own vice president, well, they're all facing kinds of criminal charges. Now, Rousseff, she's not a leftist saint either. Dirty campaigns, handing out political posts in exchange for political support. She's as guilty as her supporters who spat in the faces of opponents last night in Congress. Now, Fortune magazine listed her as the world's most disappointing leader this year. Lawmakers say her lack of charisma and a proposal to allow school children to have sex change operations are both reason enough to impeach. Reason enough in bizarre Brazil.
The morning after the president's crushing defeat in Congress brought a scathing verdict from Brazil's mostly conservative press, one daily calling it a further step towards impeachment, another predicting the beginning of the end for Dilma Rousseff. Her government, however, remains defiant, saying it'll challenge the process in the Supreme Court, organise street protests and try to block an impeachment trial in the Senate. I keep on hearing people saying, is President Rousseff going to resign? Is she becoming weak? The answer is no. A person who believes in causes and who fights for them goes until the end of that fight. Right now, though, the momentum is with Rousseff's opponents, who were jubilant on Sunday evening after a huge majority of deputies voted against the president. Thousands of pro-impeachment demonstrators had gathered to watch the live broadcast of the results.
I'm happy. The will of the people has been heard. Getting the president out is just the beginning. This will make it easier to get all the other corrupt politicians out.
Rousseff's supporters were also on the streets. It was a bitter evening for them.
We didn't expect this. That something like this could happen today. This isn't good for anyone, neither for us nor the others. What's to become of Brazil now? I'm sad and disappointed, but the fight goes on. We've got to look ahead now.
Rousseff is accused of fixing government accounts ahead of her re-election back in 2014. Critics of the impeachment process, however, say what should be a strictly legal process has now become a polarizing referendum on her popularity and could set a worrying precedent for ousting unpopular leaders.
What is going on in Brazil? Let's pull in the journalist Alex Quadros. He joins us now from Brazil's commercial capital, Sao Paulo. Good evening to you, Alex. You know, I'm calling this bizarre Brazil. And one reason is because of the reasons that have been given for impeaching the president. You know, let's talk about that for a second. Some people say that she doesn't have enough charisma. They say that there's a proposal for school children to be allowed to have sex change operations. Is this for real?
Well, it is sadly for real. And there's a old saying in Brazil that Brazil is not for beginners. But even inside the country, people watching the session in Congress yesterday found it truly surreal. One congressman cited a famous torturer from the military dictatorship and honored him in offering his vote in favor of Dilma's impeachment. But all of these reasons that they're citing just highlight that this process isn't really about the allegation that she cooked the books with the budget. It's really a political process, fundamentally.
You have said, I was looking at your Twitter feed this evening, you say that what we saw last night was not a coup. You called it a surreal sausage-making session. Why do you say, though, that it's not a coup?
Well, I think it's important to understand, first of all, that the word coup means something different in English than in Portuguese. The word golpe can mean a literal coup, but it can also mean a con or a scam. So there is some kind of semantic or linguistic ambiguity there. For a lot of Dilma supporters, they are talking about a literal break with the constitutional order. And when I say that I don't think it's a coup, it's partly because Brazil's history has seen several actual military coups, the last of which was in 1964. And I think that when you compare what appears to me to be dirty politics, what we're seeing right now in Brasilia, is fundamentally different from a military takeover. And I think it obscures the debate and kind of muddies the waters.
Oh, I mean, that's a valid point. Let me just ask you, though, about the vice president. It's emerged that he has told his supporters in a WhatsApp voice message, by the way, that went public. He's told them what he would do after Dilma is impeached. I mean, what does that tell Brazilians then about the value of their vote?
Right. Well, he, quote unquote, accidentally leaked the speech that he planned to give after taking Dilma's place as president. And it seems to be his way of signaling to his allies in business and in Congress what he plans to do. But certainly, this whole episode doesn't increase anyone's confidence in the political process. And the fact is that discredit in the political system in Brazil is already massive. Even before the current political crisis, a third of Brazilians couldn't remember who they voted for congressman 3 weeks after they voted. And what we're seeing now is people kind of giving up on the political process and apathetic about what's happening. You see a lot of images of protesters, but most people are staying home. They don't really think there's much of a difference, whether it's Dilma in power or her vice president. They don't think anything fundamental will change.
They don't think anything fundamental will change, but they're out on the street calling for this impeachment. The latest polls show that the vice president, if he were running for president today, he would probably get 1 to 2% of the vote. I mean, that just adds to this feeling that democracy right now in Brazil is a farce, doesn't it?
It does, absolutely. They did a recent poll showing that around 60% of Brazilians want Dilma to be impeached, and about the same percentage of Brazilians want her vice president, Michel Temer, to be impeached. So there's certainly a heavy dose of cognitive dissonance in the efforts to remove Dilma, because the fact is that she's going to be replaced with someone who is not really seen as legitimate.
And, let's just talk a little bit about what Brazil is. It's the land of favelas, but also the land of the super rich. It's the leader when it comes to plastic surgery, breast enlargement. And yet you've got a president who speaks to the workers, not the lookers. Is Brazil right now in the middle of an identity crisis with this?
Well, I think it is. And I think actually the Workers' Party, which is President Dilma's party and Lula's party, is having an identity crisis of its own, because it has always framed itself as the party of the poor. But over the years, it's also pursued policies that are frankly regressive. It's distributed a lot of giant tax breaks to billionaire-owned corporations, subsidized loans to billionaires. And these policies are at the heart of why Brazil is in the economic crisis that it's in now. And the fact is that the Workers' Party is losing a lot of its support among workers and the poor. At the same time, they don't see themselves represented really by anyone in the opposition. So there's a major crisis of political representation in Brazil. Yeah,
which we hear in a lot of other democracies as well at the moment. Alex Quadros in Sao Paulo talking to us, also journalist and author of the soon-to-be-published book, The Brazilianaires, which I would recommend. Alex, thank you very much. We appreciate your insights.
Thank you.
Well, amid the political turmoil in Brazil, people are looking ahead to this summer's Olympics in Rio. Some are asking on social media whether the Games are about to be overshadowed. Now, this man in Canada writes, beginning to wonder if it wouldn't be simpler to just cancel the Brazil Olympics. What with poor ticket sales, the Zika virus, and the impeachment. And another Twitter user quips, Triathlon for the Brazil Olympics. Outrun Zika mosquitoes, dodge political turmoil, and then jump over a pit of corruption. Well, at least people still have somewhat of a sense of humor there.
Yeah.
Chris Harrington from our sports desk is here to talk about. There is a sport connection to all of this. We're just months away from the Olympics in Brazil. Is this political crisis, is it a crisis for the Olympics?
Well, I would say this is definitely a contribution to the domino effect of disaster that has been really surrounding the organizing committee in the Olympics. They've been under fire for 2 years. Okay, for 2 years, they've been saying, you know, International Olympic Committee members have come and looked at the planning process and saying, you guys are way behind schedule. This is the worst we've ever seen. And this is really just adding more issues to the situation right now.
We heard that, too, in the, lead up to the World Cup also, didn't we? And the World Cup, they went off fairly well.
Yeah, well, the World Cup doesn't face the same problems as an Olympic venue would face, because you have to build different types of venues. I mean, you're not playing only on a pitch. And right now, that's a big concern for the organizers, that will the venues be ready in time? It'll be the first time in the modern day Olympics that the venues they're really questioning the fact that will they be finished on time or not? And that's a huge problem. And then you look at the money issues. Brazil's in a big recession right now.
Yeah.
You know, they seriously underestimated the costs of building all of these venues. The president of the construction company that was overseeing half of the construction projects for the Olympics, he's in jail now for bribery and money laundering. So it's not looking good on all fronts. There are a lot of construction issues and questions being raised right now in the Olympics.
What about the Olympic Committee, International Olympic Committee? I mean, has there been any reaction from them about what's going on right now?
I think they've considered turning nail biting into an Olympic event, because there are some major concerns about this. You know, in specific venues, obviously the water raises questions. They still haven't really done much to clean up or satisfy what the IOC demands in that regard. But they do have a little bit of time left. August 5th is the opening ceremony. They've been cutting corners. Might not be the same opening ceremony we've seen in the past, but it will be one nonetheless.
I mean, I don't want us to beat up on Brazil here when it comes to the Olympics. I mean, other countries have had problems too. And couldn't we also say that the IOC is guilty here as well? They should know what country they're giving the Olympics to.
I think, just to be fair, you have to go back to 2009 when Brazil won, the right to host the Olympics. The situation was not anywhere comparable to what it is now.
Yeah, but the BRIC countries,
obviously this, seemed somewhat of a promise, getting the contribution from the other countries to help support and, make sure it ran without a hitch. But right now, it's looking very shaky.
Yeah, it'll be a shaky August indeed. Chris Harrington, as always, thanks for coming in and helping us understand this story. We appreciate it.
All right.